to the first episode of Inside the Huddle. I'm Jade.
I'm Dietrich.
I'm Olivia.
I'm Abby.
Today we are going to talk about how social media has changed sports engagement, and later we'll have a special guest joining us.
All right, y'all. Um, I guess with people using social media to interact with, athletes, pros, other, media personnel, where do you think that leaves radio shows, magazines, um, and like kind of meet and greets, if you would call that?
I think it like you can already see the effects it has on magazines. Like I think Sports Illustrated is kind of going downhill and stuff. With meet and greets, I also think that's like a really big topic right now, just because a lot of athletes have like heightened security. I think like a great example of that was like the Duke game. There, like the bus was gated for the opposing players, which I thought was interesting. I've never seen that before for like a collegiate basketball game. I guess like the high stakes, obviously, but yeah, you can kind of see like the heightened security and just like magazines and stuff kind of decreasing in popularity.
Yeah, I feel like
I
honestly,
agree.
yeah,
No,
like
go ahead.
you're fine. With I guess like TikTok and things of that nature. Especially like with all these social sites getting more advanced. I'm pretty sure Facebook even has like new features where like you can like, go live and stuff like that. Um, I feel like it makes it like a lot easier for um athletes to interact directly with like, their fans. I forgot exactly who it was, but Sam actually like he showed me this guy who I think he's in MMA who obviously when you think MMA you think about brolic men beating on each other. But he did like his own like little like comedy thing. He does like cooking and things of that nature and it kind of like appeals to, his specific audience. So I feel like with like the advancement of all these like, this technology and different streaming websites and things of that nature, it I feel like all these other things will kind of like have to move out of the way.
Yeah, kind of jumping off of what Dietrich just said. I think that social media kind of helps with like fans and audiences to see like the person behind the player. I think that um like radio broadcasts and stuff are more just like the player itself, like saying like how many yards a quarterback threw or how many touchdowns they had. But then I think like once you take it to social media, you can like actually see like what that team, so like if it's like Josh Allen, like what the Bills are posting. And like if he does like an interview or something, you can see like the personality and like the person behind the player. So I think that social media kind of helps um audiences kind of form that like parasocial relationship um more than like a radio show or like a magazine could do.
Like I remember in class we talked about like rating radio shows when they would have someone call in. I just don't think that's necessary now because now athletes can DM, like you can go on DMs and you lives, they can talk to people on lives and Twitter's big. I just don't think it's as necessary now with all these social media platforms.
Yeah,
Mm.
I completely agree. Like that extra step is not even needed anymore. So I think obviously we talked about like what makes a radio show big is like having those calling guests, but if you take away that factor, it kind of takes away a huge audience as well. So kind of going off of that, like we see the increase of social media, but we also talked about like the pressure of being first to report something versus like accurate information. And I think that was like something we saw, especially with like the Luca Anthony Davis trade, was that um who was the first one to break it? That was obviously a massive thing for anyone in the sports world, whether you know basketball or not. You kind of know those players. So seeing who was breaking that first, and I think a lot of people were still like, that's not true, like and stuff like that. But we also talked about in class, like it's more important to be accurate versus first because then it takes away credibility, which I think is really important, especially now with like social media and having Twitter. Like you can watch something happen and you can go report on it, but I think it's important to have all the details.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like now with especially like stuff like you can just get on your phone and go type up whatever. If you have any type of information, you can leak like all types of stuff. I know of one instance where there was a basketball player who was expected to be traded to a team, but no one knew about it but him and obviously like their GMs and like their coaching staff. Um, and he was in a relationship with like a girl and told her, and she went on Twitter and said like, "Hey, this guy's going, he's getting traded to this team," and everybody was like, "No, that's dumb. Like, he's not getting traded to that team." A couple months down the line, he ended up getting traded to that team, and she like kind of reposted was like, "I told you so." So, with the right people, I feel like it could honestly like boost a lot of sites like credibility, if you want to say that.
Yeah, I know that there's I follow like NHL a lot. So I know that there's like one guy on Twitter who always like he's the first person that people go to when they're looking for like what teams are like interested in trading which players. Um and like obviously he's got someone inside to like tell him what's going on. Um but like kind of like Dietrich said, like it builds credibility when you are one of the first people to like announce something like that, especially if it's like a big trade. Um, so I think that like being first, it does have its benefits, but you do have to make sure that like the information is credible and accurate before you just post it so you don't look dumb in front of a bunch of people because you're like, oh, this person's going to this place, and then everybody else is like, we're actually not trading him like whatsoever.
I know like I don't use I used to use Google and ESPN to get all my news, but now like I just will go on Twitter or TikTok or Instagram and like that's just like the easiest way to find stuff. And doesn't mean it's accurate. It's so much easier to find that. So I think it's hard to balance finding what's accurate and what's not.
Oh yeah, it for sure makes it a lot harder to, you know, what you just said, like find what's accurate and what's not.
Yeah, and even sorry, even like major outlets can be wrong sometimes. I know like during the Grammys, Barstool Sports had posted something about Kanye West being kicked out, which I don't think that ended up being true. I'm not for sure, but there were still people like no one else is reporting this. Like, is it true? Is it not? So I think like having big outlets report that it's inconvenient because you put your trust in them and then they end up being like not credible. So it's always like important to find those sources and what works best for everyone. I know like everyone else, like everyone uses a different form. Some people use like ESPN apps, some people just use like Instagram. So trying to find that balance is really important.
Um, sure, I think you can talk more about this. How important do you think personal branding is for athletes?
Um, Especially in this day and age, when you talk about NIL, meaning name, image, and likeness, I think players have a more hands-on approach to, like creating more value for themselves. And that could be with anything. I know a lot of my friends now, they like they're gamers, and before they couldn't like, get on the stream and go make money with I guess YouTube or Steam. But like with NIL now, like you can go and do that and it's perfectly fine. Um there was he plays professional football now, but it's not the NFL. But I know a lot of people know of Destroying. He was a pretty good kicker actually. Um, but he started doing YouTube, and NCAA kind of didn't like that then. So it kind of like messed up his eligibility and things of that nature. And it was kind of honestly bad timing because now you can do that. And he was a pretty good kicker with a pretty big following on YouTube. So I feel like that would have for sure boosted his career to heights that honestly people wouldn't even know. So I think it's pretty important and a big deal that like we can like I guess personally brand ourselves now. well, that's it for the introduction. We'll see y'all in a couple minutes with our guest. How y'all doing, everybody? We're here with Faxon Childress. How you doing today, man?
Doing great. Excited to be here and appreciate y'all having me on, man.
No, we appreciate you. Could you tell us what you do exactly?
Yeah, so I'm the host of Faxon Sports, which is a radio show that runs on the flagship station for Clemson Athletics, 105.5 The Roar. I'm also a freelance play-by-play broadcaster for ESPN Plus, some stuff with ACC and X, and a couple other outlets as well.
No doubt. And we appreciate you coming on here. Well, we'll have a couple questions. It shouldn't run too long. But let's get into it.
Can you just tell us, like, share a bit about your background in sports broadcasting and how social media has changed the industry since you've started?
Yeah, that's a good question. A little bit of my personal background. So, I was a high school athlete. I always loved sports, played multiple sports my whole life. And then, getting to college, having that realization that most do, that you're not good enough to play in college. So for me, it was just really just about finding a different route, of staying involved with the sports world. And I started at the station I currently work for as an unpaid intern, as a senior in high school, and just kind of work my way up the ladder from there, and just continue to say yes to every opportunity I was given. So that's kind of how I got my start, was really just an unpaid internship. But I knew I loved sports and wanted to be around sports. So really just kind of grew into a love and a passion for it. And on the social media front, I think it's changed the game completely. You've got so much power just at your fingertips related to your phone, where you can pop up your camera and record a video with yourself on it, and give your take, and give whatever you want to say about any specific topic, in politics, sports, whatever the realm may be. Social media has been a game changer because it gives everybody a voice. And, if you've got people that agree with your opinions, or if you've got people that agree with your takes, they're going to cling to that, and they're going to run with it. So I feel like that's, for me, probably the primary way it's changed. Even 4 or 5 years ago, when I was just getting into college and just really starting to get into this landscape of sports broadcasting, I don't think social media was as much of a priority. But I feel like a lot of different companies and schools, even, and athletic departments, are realizing now that social media holds a lot of power, in the sports broadcasting world and in the sports media world in general. And, it's a way to get your voice out there to a lot more people than people realize.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. And kind of just like bouncing off of that, like I agree. Like I think that social media, just like in the world of sports in general, has just completely changed the game. I think just like with the amount of engagement that it gets, especially like you were saying, it was just like a intern role that you started. I think that now with social media, everybody's like kind of trying to get big or like start a new podcast that they think is like gonna get them like one step into the game. Um, so thank you for that. Um, how do you personally use social media to engage with fans and build your audience?
Yeah, for me, I would say the primary social media platform I use is Twitter, or X now. I think I've seen the most success with that, just because personally, I feel like that's kind of where you can carve out a niche. And for me, it's been like with Clemson athletics and sports in general. And on Twitter, you can kind of find like a group of people or a community of people that all are interested in the same thing. And for me, I've been able to build a little bit of a following and an audience on there, from just tweeting about Clemson sporting events, or tweeting about whatever is happening in the NFL, the NBA, whatever it may be. And, people, after enough time of doing it, and growing into kind of what I'm doing now, people care enough about what I have to say to follow me. So for me, that's been the most effective. But I will say, like, I'm going to continue to try and branch out into Instagram and TikTok as well, because I feel like those are two platforms that really have some rapid growth available to you and some upward mobility when you start to use them. Like TikTok specifically, a lot of people use the algorithm in their advantage to blow their videos up and stuff along those lines. And it's also just like more of a direct and quick way to, engage in content. Like, it really only has to be 10 to 15 seconds. Your face can be on camera, the background can be whatever, but you can get all the information that you need to get out in those 10 to 15 seconds. And, I think a lot of people that are our age as well, that you guys can speak if you feel like I'm wrong, but struggle with attention span. Like, for me personally, like, I know when I'm on TikTok, I don't like to use it a lot because I'm always just scrolling, like trying to look for the next video. So I feel like that is definitely effective because, people our age don't have a super large attention span. So you got to get to your point within 5 to 10 seconds of a video. Or for me personally, it's getting scrolled or it's getting skipped. So I think people take that into note and take that into mind when using those platforms. But for me personally, I've seen the most success on Twitter thus far.
Gotcha. You kind of touched on this in your last one, but have you noticed a shift in how fans interact with sports content due to like the different platforms that they use, like say Twitter or X, and then like Instagram and TikTok?
Yes, I think the answer would be 100% yes. And I think things are becoming more casual is one of the ways that I would describe it. Like for me personally, I work in an industry that has a lot of people. Like for example, the radio station I work at, I'm the youngest by 15 plus years. The other people that do my job, there are three other people are 36, 57, and 67. So I'm the youngest by a landslide. And a lot of these people have kind of preconceived notions about what it should look like in the industry and what you should be, putting out on social media. I've always been somebody that's not really afraid to do things my own way. I'm going to have fun with it. We only get one life, and I'm not going to spend it sitting being boring on social media because the people 30 years before me in this industry think that's the right thing to do. Personally, I don't really care. I don't think it's that deep. So I'm going to screw around and have fun with it and post memes and post casual stuff. And I feel like that's stuff that people our age are more geared towards, to be honest with you. Like it's really not that deep at the end of the day. Everybody's trying to joke around and have some fun with it. So I feel like that's probably the biggest shift I've noticed in the sports world is like, I'll tweet something that I do 30 minutes of research on for a stat or something along those lines or analysis of a game, and it will get 3 likes. Or I could post something like incredibly stupid that's a meme, but it's funny, and it's going to get 150 likes, and a bunch of people are going to retweet it, right? So it's just stuff like that, and I feel like kind of knowing when to lean into it and knowing when to deviate from it. But I feel like it's become more unserious, and I feel like it's for the better personally. I know a bunch of the older people don't necessarily think that, but I feel like this is the way that things are trending, and there's no going back once it shifts. So I feel like that shift has already started for sure.
Can you just like talk a little bit more about the balance between like being authentic and then being professional on social media when you're covering sports?
Yeah, I feel like the number one thing is to stay objective, right? So like I work for the Clemson flagship station, and like obviously I'm a Clemson alum. I pulled for the team my whole life, but that's not my job is to pull for the team. My job is to analyze the team and break down the teams and talk about what's going on. So like it can be hard to tote that line at times because like obviously I want Clemson to win and everything, and I don't hide from that fact, but you got to know when to be critical as well. And keeping professionalism and maintaining professionalism is important, even if you're screwing around like I do sometimes and post memes. Like, don't you put anything with like profanity in it, for example, right? And it can't be something that's like offensive or something along those lines that is just going to give your employer a bad look. So I feel like for me, that's kind of where I gear my focus towards when I think about what I'm delineating and trying to post is like, okay, how can I answer for this to my boss if I got pressed about it? And that might be the wrong way to go through things. But for me, that kind of helps me tote the line of what is professional and what's not, and what might be crossing the line and what might not be. So that's kind of what my thought process is just the fact that, when I'm tweeting something or I'm saying something on social media, whether it's fair or not, that's also a reflection of my employer. So for me, it's really just about having that conversation with myself before I post, or trying to figure out if it's acceptable or not.
Do you think?
Yeah, I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I like you kind of said this a little bit in your last question as well, but like how the different engagement in each um like post that you have. Like I talked with the social media manager for the LA Chargers, and she said that all of their posts, they want to make it feel like their fans are on like a FaceTime call with them for all of their like posts. So I think that like having like the authentic version of that or like posting the memes or like the funny things, I think that does help with like driving more audience to your channel. I think if people can relate to you, um then like they're definitely more likely to like listen and tune into all of your stuff.
Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement, and I feel like I've kind of picked up on that as well. I've had a good amount of growth in the last 3 months, and it's really just from letting loose a little bit and like actually starting to show off a little more of my personality and who I actually am, like off the air and outside of all of this. So I've been pretty pleased with how all that's been going. But I think you're right, Abby. I think that's the right way to view it.
Do you think social media has made sports journalism better or worse?
Ooh. I think better, but there are negatives to it. Like, for example, I don't know, like it's kind of a weird topic and I don't want to really get a ton into it, but like the sports gambling stuff, I think is a negative because a lot of these athletes are starting to take a lot of scrutiny because, people are losing bets. And like that part of it, I really don't like because I feel like it puts the athlete in a super unfair position. But in anything that's not related to sports gambling, I think it's a positive, to be honest with you. Like, obviously, when you're a D1 athlete, like Dietrich sitting right here, he knows like you're going to get some flack, right? You don't play well, you're going to have to answer to your coaches. You're going to have to answer to the fans. That's a part of the pressure. And the pressure is a privilege to an extent. But social media has like magnified it so much to where if you make a bad play or if you're in the biggest game of your life and you make one mistake, it's going to be magnified for everybody and you're going to have to hear about it online and they're tagging you and stuff. And that part of it I don't love from like a player interaction perspective, but as far as like engagement and fans and like growing the game, I think it's a positive. So I think I can see both sides of it, but just like knowing Dietrich, for example, for a couple of years and like knowing a bunch of the guys on our football team, basketball teams, whatever it may be, super well, and having to sit there and watch a bunch of our fans tweet some pretty terrible things about them, that's not ever fun for me. Just knowing like who the people are off the field, off the court, whatever it may be. But as long as they're not going at players, I think that the social media usage has been a really good thing in totality.
How do you think social media changed the way sports narratives are shaped? Would you say teams, players, or fans are more in control now?
Yeah, I would say they're more in control. I actually think it's changed it pretty drastically. And narratives are a dangerous thing too, because, a lot of times fans are going to get online and they're going to run their mouth about stuff that they don't understand. And it's people that don't understand the game at a high level and don't really understand what they're watching. So it does create like a dangerous element to it as well, because you start to get like, for example, let's just take an NBA team. So they just traded Dallas. Dallas just traded Luka Doncic, right? The whole fan base wants their GM fired. His name's Nico Harrison. You go on Dallas's Twitter, you go on their Instagram, and you click on any post, and I promise you the top comment is fire Nico Harrison, or this has been a terrible trade, and this is just this awful thing. And like, you know what? In that instance, they may be right. I didn't agree with it either. But you got to take a lot of heat for that, and you got to take a lot of flack for that. And people might not realize like the impact that they have when they get on Twitter and they tweet something at someone, but there are eyes that are going to see it, right? Like the Mavericks understand that the fan base is like completely up in arms with what their general manager did. So would that be the entire reason if they decided to make a move this offseason and fire their general manager? Probably not the entire reason, but it's adding some ammunition to the case to fire him if that's, the route that they wanted to go. And like we've seen some stuff that's pretty similar even here at Clemson in the last couple of years, and there have been some coaching changes. And I don't think that's entirely because of the fan base, and I don't think decisions are ever made entirely because of the fan base, but in my eyes, it definitely has some baseline level of impact on the decision making because if you have such a loud section of your fan base that is all in agreement on one thing and they are publicly posting their opinion using their platform, that does have impact whether people realize it or not.
Actually, man, that actually makes a lot of sense. Um, I remember honestly with the Super Bowl and things of that nature and like all of this stuff that's going on. Um, I don't know if you've seen it, but uh one of the players, I guess, kind of threw a shot at Travis Kelce saying that like he should have stayed with his ex. Um, Given that like what y'all talking about narratives and things of that nature, like do you think it makes it like harder for, I guess, like kind of like people that like do what you do? Does it make it harder for y'all to do y'all's jobs when, like players can kind of tweet whatever they want, post whatever they want at any possible time. And I guess it kind of creates stories for y'all, but it kind of throws y'all for a loop, would you say?
Yeah, I think, yeah, like you said, you can see both sides of it. I think it's important for the players to be able to have their voice and platform. I will say that, like, I've been openly critical of players. I've been openly critical of coaches. It's a part of my job and it's what I get paid to do. In the same way, it's the player's job to play and the coach's job to coach, right? And they're getting paid to do that as well. So I do think that the coaches and the players should be able to have a platform to clap back and say something, especially if somebody's crossing the line. Like I always try and do a really good job of just staying objective and staying on the field and not taking personal shots. And I saw CJ GJ did that about Travis Kelce's ex. That was pretty funny. I'm not gonna sit here and lie. Like that was pretty funny. I think we all kind of laughed at that. But I will say like it does make it a little more difficult to an extent to do my job, just knowing that like you could have to answer for anything that like I go on the air for 3 hours every single day, and like anybody can take anything of what I say and clip it for that 10 seconds and then try and push whatever narrative they want to push based off of that 10-second thing that I say. So that's a risk I run every single day of my life with the job that I do. So I do think that the players and the coaches deserve that platform, and they should be able to say their opinion. And if they feel like a media member is crossing the line, they should definitely speak up and say something. And I'm very diligent to make sure that I don't cross any lines and very careful about that. But there are definitely some clowns in the media. Like you've seen it before, Dietrich. There are definitely some people that take things too far. They take personal shots and they cross the line. So I can see both sides of it. It makes it a little more difficult to an extent, but I don't think that the players or the coaches should have their platform taken away from them. And I think they should be able to defend themselves in the same way that I would want to defend myself if I were in that position.
Right, right. What trends do you see shaping, I guess, the next 5 to 10 years of sports broadcasting?
Ooh, to be honest, I think we're getting ready for a youth movement to kind of come in, and more people that are closer to my age and have more of my style and lens on things. And I say that just because we got a lot of dinosaurs right now that are in sports broadcasting. Like we got a lot of old heads, and there's nothing wrong with being an old head. But age catches up to everybody at some point, and obviously, like those guys have been doing it for ages, and they've been doing such a fantastic job at it. And like even here at Clemson, like I'm so blessed to have a guy like Don Munson who has looked out for me. And he's not even an old head. He's not who I'm referencing. I'm more talking about like I don't know, some of the people you see on ESPN, like even a Dick Vitale who just had the game at Clemson, like who's like 80 something years old. But Don's been like such a great resource to me because he's been doing it for so long that he can help teach me the fundamentals and be a great resource for me to get advice from. So I've got a lot of people like that are in my corner that have been willing to kind of show me the ropes and help me out. But I do think that people are responding more on and offline to more energy with broadcasts, to people using like lingo and slang that's more conducive to people that are our age. And, people that are a little bit more casual with it. Like I don't take any of this too serious. And I don't say that as a disrespect to the profession. Like I'm really just trying to have fun at the end of the day. And it's not that deep to me. Like I'm not over here overthinking every single broadcast that I do or every single radio show that I do, because the sun's going to shine tomorrow, right? Like, and you don't know when your last day is going to be. So there are a lot of people that are the old heads that I'm referencing. That isn't anybody at Clemson, thankfully. We don't have anyone like that here. But on the national level, that like take everything so serious and, are just so stuck in their ways because they've been doing it for so long that they're refusing to adapt. And, we've seen it in basketball with the 3-pointer, and we've seen it in football with using motion on offense, right? Like you adapt or you die at the end of the day. It's really as simple as that. So if you don't get with the times, you're going to get left behind. And I feel like in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to start to see more and more young broadcasters like myself start to take over on some of these major networks, because it's the way that the social media trends are going. It's what people are responding to on social media. Like when you hear Gus Johnson make a stupid call and make a pop culture reference, like, yeah, that's not the way that it's traditionally supposed to be, but it's funny and everybody is responding to it because they think it's cool. And it's like, oh, the broadcaster just made some stupid reference to a movie or to a rapper or a lyric or whatever. And like everybody's enjoying it, and it's going on social media and everybody's engaged in there as well. So I really just think that the times are changing from that perspective. And I think that a lot of these companies are going to start leaning more into the youth and people that have a little bit more of an understanding on what like the next generation is looking for when they're viewing a sporting event.
How would you feel like? Do you feel like there will be backlash with that? Honestly, like you're just talking about, like some of the bigger named quote unquote dinosaurs that we have in the like broadcasting industry right now. I feel like a lot of people like in today's society kind of flock towards that more, the older way of like sports broadcasting and media. So like,
Yeah.
how do you feel like that'll be, I guess, combated?
I mean, I think every single thing in the history of life that's been new has been met with some backlash, right? Like if you're going to try something new and you're going to go against the grain, you're going to be met with some backlash. But at the end of the day, like you got to think about who holds the power here in this certain situation. The power is not held with the people that are already 70 plus years old, because they don't have that much time left, and they don't have that much time to perform at a high level left at the end of the day. It might sound harsh, but it's the reality of the situation. So the older generation is running out of time, whether they realize it or not, when it comes to broadcasting and when it just comes to life in general. So they can be upset about it, and they can make their complaints and have their issues and have their qualms with it. And they're more than entitled to have that, right? Everybody's entitled to their opinion. But at the end of the day, like, people are being born every day. People are dying every day, right? Like in this industry and sports in general are moving towards more of a modern landscape and moving towards more of a youth movement. Like you see it online, you see it on your television, you see it on social media. Things have already changed drastically from where they were 15 years ago. Like, for example, Gus Johnson, like he made a Kevin Gates reference on a broadcast the other day. You think that would have ever happened 10 years ago of anybody name dropping a rapper on a broadcast? No.
Oh,
He made a Boss Man D'Lo reference on an NBA game on ESPN on like the major network ESPN, and everybody thought it was cool and everybody thought it was funny. So like I guess people are already starting to trend towards that. And to your point, Dietrich, like there are people who prefer the more traditional style, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't think that those people are wrong necessarily. But the way that things are moving, I just don't see how there's not a massive shift in the next 5 years in the sports broadcasting world, just with what people that are in our age range are responding to, and with some of these older people starting to be out of the mix just due to age, life in general, and stuff along those lines.
speaking of that shift, since we're like more in the time of social media now, do you think that will also shift with the times? Like, I feel like people are flocking more towards like the instant gratification of like, hey, like if something happened last night, I could just click on Instagram or click on YouTube and it's gonna be right there. Like I don't have to watch an entire game to see it, or I don't have to listen to an entire podcast to hear about it. Like, I can just go look it up and it's right there. So I don't know, do you think like with platforms like TikTok and Instagram, and obviously different streaming networks, do you think traditional sports broadcasting will, I guess, continue to be dominant, or will it flock more towards social media?
I would say flock more towards social media, but I also think it's a little deeper than that because like cable is already starting to die, and that's a big part of this as well. It's like we're starting to go more towards streaming platforms. Like I'm not sure what y'all do. I haven't had cable in 5 years. I'm on YouTube TV. A lot of people are using like Hulu because they have live sports. So you got like a bunch of different streaming platforms now that you can get your sports content or live TV content. So we've already started to have a little bit of that shift. And as far as social media's like stance in this and role in this, I do think we're going to continue to shift more towards that instant gratification on what you're talking about because of the attention span, which I brought up at the very beginning, right? Like for me personally, with my job, I don't have the physical time in a day to watch every game that I want to watch. So I'm catching the condensed game on YouTube, or I'm catching the highlights, or I'm going on TikTok and I'm watching a breakdown of the game, or like Dietrich for football, like I'll go watch the all 22 and I'll sift through whatever, how many possessions, right? Like there are so many different ways to inherit your content nowadays and inherit the sports world nowadays and take all that in that I don't see how we put the toothpaste back in the tube per se and go back to the other direction of where it was. Like I feel like we've already got the ball rolling on this, and it's just going to increasingly lean more and more towards social media and putting stuff on social media and having that as the main way to view all your content. Like all of y'all are my age, right? I'm 22. I'm assuming y'all are all in a similar age range. Like we're all on our phone pretty much all day. Whether we want to admit it or not, it's the truth. We're probably all on our phone too much. And a big part of that is you can get whatever you need on your phone. I want to talk to my grandma that I haven't talked to in a week. I can get her on my phone in 15 seconds with a text message. I want to talk to my cousins. I can get them on my phone in 15 seconds. Oh, well, I want to watch something on YouTube. I can have it in 15 seconds. Like that is the world we live in. We live in the world right here. So like people don't realize how powerful this thing is right here. People don't realize like you can have whatever you want with your phone, and it's dangerous because it creates like a false reality and a false precedent and a lack of patience in like other areas of life where you don't have everything like at your fingertips or within 15 seconds. So I I think it's a problem to be honest with you, but it's a problem that's not going away because like obviously smartphones aren't going away. But long-winded way of saying, yeah, I don't think that the social media stuff is going anywhere. If anything, like I think we're within a year or two of having another platform like TikTok that blows up, that's a completely new, innovative way where you can share your content and interact with your friends. And all of these things are just increasing the outlets for how you can get your sports media content, which is furthering to kill off the traditional way of viewing all your sports media content, which is slowly dying, whether people realize it or not.
No, no doubt. Um, kind of like picking up off what we are just talking about with social media. Obviously, like you're everywhere, man. So, like, if you were to give any advice to like any, I guess, like younger broadcasters, kind of like yourself, on, I guess, like leveraging social media for career growth, like what would that be?
Yeah, I would say don't be afraid to put yourself out there and don't be afraid to be yourself. Even for me, I spent a lot of time like worrying about what other people would say if I posted something, or, just thinking like, oh, like would they think this is lame? Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Social media is fake anyways. Like nobody cares. It's not like an accurate representation of how you're living your day-to-day life. So you might as well just post what you want. Like it's your social media page. Why are you worried about what other people are thinking about your social media? It's yours. It's your page. You can unfollow them, they can unfollow you. That would be my advice, is just like don't be afraid to go out on a limb. Don't be afraid to be judged. There are a lot of people who laughed at me when I started doing what I was doing, and everybody laughs until it works. That would be another thing. Everybody laughs until it works. Like when you've got 5 followers on an account and you're posting, and people are giving you crap about it because it's like, oh, like this guy's going nowhere, like what is he doing? It's super easy to like try and knock people while they're down, and for whatever reason, like a lot of people take their own insecurities and like to do that. Don't listen to what anybody else has to say and just do you. That would be my number one piece of advice, is if you want to go and do something in the world in general, whether it's social media, whether it's broadcasting, stop making excuses and shut up and go do it. It's really as simple as that. Like people will make every excuse possible to not do something, and almost all of those revolve around other people, where it's like, oh, well, what if this person says this, or what if this person thinks this? No one cares, and no one's thinking about you that much. Just post the video and do it. And all it takes is one video or one person to see a video, and your entire life can change, and you can make your dreams come true. That's all it takes. One viral video, one moment where, maybe it's somebody at a major network and you're a broadcaster and you think that the video sucks, but they think it's really good. So they reach out as a result of that, and you get a job as a result of that. Like that's how this industry works. You have to put yourself out there, and you have to be willing to take risks, or you're not going to have any reward. So that would be my advice, is just don't listen to what anybody else has to say about you. Do you and stick true to yourself, and you will see success as a result.
No doubt, man. I love that. Does anybody else have anything?
Yeah, I know we're running out of time, but you had talked about that age barrier kind of multiple times. And I was just wondering kind of your experience with it, especially like you obviously know social media, and the person closest in your age is a whole generation gap. So could you talk about your experience, how you overcame that? Because I feel like a lot of young people working in sports kind of have that same issue of like they don't know how to navigate that type of thing.
Yeah, that's a great question, Olivia. And it's not something that's easy, to be honest with you. It's not something that's easy at all. It hasn't been something that's been easy the entire time I've been doing this. Like I'm 22 now, so like I'm starting to gain a little more respect and being taken a little more serious. But I started doing this when I was 18. Like I was literally a kid, and a freshman in college that was just coming off my senior year of high school. And you're gonna have a lot of people that look down on you as a result of that. And I would say it wraps back to mentality and mindset in the way you approach everything, right? Like the people that are older that are going to look down on you and judge you as a result of that, at one point were your age. They were you at one point. They were. So for me, as simple as that sounds and as stupid as it may sound, like that kind of helped me work through a lot of that. Was like, you know what? At one point, the person I'm looking up to, or the person that's passing judgment on me, was my age. And another part of it is a lot of it comes from envy, right? Like a lot of these people that are older are upset with their lives and upset with the way that their lives have worked out. So they use that to try and crush other people's dreams and be negative towards them. The main thing I will say throughout all of this, if you don't take anything else away from it, do not care what other people think about you, because it doesn't matter at all. It doesn't matter. None of it matters. The way that you are viewed to another person does not matter. You need to do you. You need to not be afraid to take risks, and you need to be nice to everybody along the way, and make sure you're prioritizing those relationships and connections. And you can have anything you want in this industry. I truly believe that. But where people start to stray from the plan is they're listening to people that are around them that are trying to put them down, and they're not listening to the criticism, they're listening to the negativity. There's a difference between negativity and criticism. There are people that are going to try and be negative and drag you down, and it's happened to me myself millions of times at this point, of people saying, oh, you can't do it this way, or you're too young, or this. Like, don't put that on yourself. That's other people that are unhappy with their situation that are trying to put you in a box. Don't put yourself in a box because they're unhappy where they're at. That doesn't mean you have to be unhappy where you're at.
Thank you. That was very insightful. Appreciate it.
Yep.
No doubt, man. Well, we're gonna wrap this up, man. We appreciate you coming out and sharing your thoughts. But if there's anything you'd like to say to close out, you have the floor.
Nah, nothing else. Appreciate y'all. Let me come on. If there's anything I can do to help all y'all in any way, let me know.
No doubt. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you
Yep.
so much.
Thank you.